Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Thompson, and welcome to NOACA's 2022 Enhanced Mobilities for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities, Section 5310 Application Workshop. So just to get started here, a few items. My name is Jim Thompson. I work at NOACA, and also on the webinar today, who's going to be presenting with me is Sarah White. And she is our mobility manager and a planner as well. This is a Zoom webinar. So that being the case, what that means is that we are projecting the presentation out to you, but you are unable to turn your cameras on, and you are also unable to chat with each other or use your chat function. One thing about that, though, is if you have questions during the process, we ask you that you use the Q&A function on the Zoom webinar. We'll mention that again here and there, but we just want to make sure that you know that. Overall, though, we are going to have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So if you have more complicated questions, please hold on to those then, and you can type those in. This is being recorded, and so it currently is being recorded right now. That also includes the questions that we have in the chat box, the Q&A box for you. We are going to post the recorded webinar onto our website in the next couple of days after it is completed. So you'll be able to find this in the future at noaca.org/5310. See if there's any other items here. Okay, so with that being said, today, Sarah White and I are going to present on our program. We're going to talk about the Section 5310 program in terms of our application period, eligibility, and things like that. So without further ado, go ahead, Sarah, you can go ahead and start.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for attending our webinar, and I'm just going to get started to talk a little bit about what the program is. So our presentation, the entire presentation will include, again, I'll be presenting the program overview, and then Jim will pick up with the application information and the timeline for the program. So Section 5310, the full name of it is Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program. But of course, we just go by Section 5310. It is a federal program, and it focuses on projects planned, designed, and carried out to meet the needs of seniors and individuals with disabilities. This goes beyond the Americans with Disability Act, and the intent is to improve access to fixed route service, decrease reliance on paratransit services, and then just to also provide alternatives to public transportation, because we know that some people are unable to use those services. So this just goes above and beyond to provide. Next slide. So in NOACA's program, we provide capital grants. So those are specifically for public transit agencies, municipalities, private nonprofits, and then also for-profit companies. And that is used, again, to provide transportation for people, seniors and individuals with disabilities. Next slide. Go back one, Jim. Okay. We also provide operational funding, but that is only provided to public transit agencies. So if you are a public transit agency, you would have the option to apply for operations funding. But if you are, again, a municipality, nonprofit, or for-profit, that is not an option at this time. So again, applicants must be either a public transit agency, a private nonprofit organization, a state or local government authority, or a private operator of public transportation services. All awardees must also meet federal requirements. So again, the program must support, mainly support services for seniors and people with disabilities. Also, your service must be primarily within the Cleveland urbanized area and will show a map of that. And then you must also agree to the FTA certifications, assurances, and reporting requirements that are involved with this plan. So again, going back over those eligible capital projects. Most of you are probably familiar with the program in that we provide vehicles, or funding for the vehicles. But we also provide funding for communications equipment, hardware, software equipment, mobility management and coordination programs, and also accessibility improvement projects. The vehicle projects are currently a regional priority because we know that there are so many vehicles, on the road that are past their useful life, and they really need to be replaced. So that is our priority, but we also consider these other projects as well. And then again, just going back to who is eligible for operations projects, that is specifically for public transit agencies. So looking at this application period, this is the breakdown of how much we have funding-wise. Our Cleveland Urbanized apportionment from the federal government this year is, every year we're very lucky, it's just ticked up a little bit each time. So this year we have 1.8 million. NOACA retains 10% of that for administrative costs. So we take 188,000, but then that leaves almost $1.7 million for funding. So 60% of that we set aside for public transit agencies, and then the 40% we set aside for nonprofits, municipalities, etc. We also may have some additional funds carry over from previous years. We don't know yet because we're, those projects are still in progress, but we may have a little bit more funding available. So again, the total available we're looking at right now as an estimate is about $1.7 million. Next slide. So a little bit about the funding program and what goes into it. The program allows capital projects to be funded at 80%. So the other 20% needs to come from your agency or the local agency, et cetera. For public transit agencies who are applying for operations funding, that is a 50% match. So 50% from the federal government and 50% from the transit agency. The funding is distributed over 12 to 24 months. That would be the contract that we create if you're awarded funding. And so that would start in late spring. So as an agency, there are specific parameters your local match can come from. There's quite a long list. It can be from state or local appropriations, tax revenues from your community. It can be private donations. It can be revenue if you provide service for an agency, human service contracts. You can use some of the revenue from that. You can use advertising income, essentially anything that is not a DOT fund. And so the way the program works is that NOACA is a designated recipient of these funds. So we're kind of the middle agency between the federal government and your agency. So, we're here to help you with the program and make everything as clear as we possibly can. And then when the funding, if you were to receive funding, the way it works is all of the awards are on a reimbursement basis. So the agency would incur initial cost at 100%, but then you would forward the invoice and all the proper documentation to NOACA. NOACA then requests reimbursement from the federal government out of that 1.7 million we were discussing. but then we would in turn reimburse you. So again, 100% initially, but then we would send you reimbursement payment of 80%. And then earlier we were discussing the funding based on the Cleveland urbanized area. So this map here shows what that is. So the Cleveland urbanized area is kind of in this greenish color. And then there are other urbanized areas around us. So the yellow is Lorraine-Elyria, and the red is the Akron area, urbanized area. So if you provide service primarily within the green area, you know, you're absolutely the intended applicants for this program. If you provide service outside of there, we can also connect you with the proper administration for 5310. So if you're kind of in the white area, that might be an instance where you would use the program through ODOT, but we can help you with that and figure out what who the best administrator of this funding is, because again, this is a nationwide program, and Ohio has different administrators of these funds. And so kind of the basis and the guidestone towards the 5310 program is the coordinated plan. This is something many of you have been involved in this, the creation of this plan in the past, but essentially it just guides everything that we do in terms of helping seniors and people with disabilities have the greatest mobility that they can. So all projects must be consistent with the goals and objectives of the coordinated plan. Our last plan was updated in we worked on that pretty significantly through 2018 into 2019. So if you're a part of that, you might remember that. But this plan is good for a few more years. So as I said before, it's updated every 4 years. We have led the update efforts. We reviewed the goals, strategies, considered new upcoming issues. That's why we update it every 4 years, because we know that things are always changing, new technologies, new providers. And then we look at solutions for those specialized transportation needs. And again, we do extensive partnership and outreach. And I know many of you attending this have worked with us and been a significant partner in these coordinated plan efforts. So just to kind of give you an idea, the goals of the coordinated plan, which is called Mobilize, is to improve and expand transportation options for seniors and people with disabilities. We want to improve accessibility, affordability, and quality of that transportation. We also want to improve the coordination so that we're not working so much in silos, we're working together and coordinating services where we can. And then the fourth goal is just to improve awareness of those transportation issues, both to people who need service and then the greater public as well. So the vehicle purchases, if that is something that you are applying for the vehicles, your fleet must be at least 50% accessible upon receiving this vehicle or purchasing the vehicle. Vehicles must meet Buy America standards if your total purchase is $150,000 or more. And there's a link here in the presentation, which we can also put in the Q&A, that just gives a little bit more information about Buy America. But it's something that also you can learn a little bit from vendors. And currently, ODOT, the Ohio Department of Transportation, also has term contracts with vendors and cooperative purchasing program. So you can learn a little bit more about different vendors, different vehicle options. Unfortunately, they're currently updating their cooperative purchasing awards right now, so I don't have a current link, but we will let you know as soon as they get those updated vendors on their website. So as I said before, ODOT funds or administers the Section 5310 program for large portions of our state. So they have, again, a cooperative purchasing program, just to make it very simple for their awardees. If you are a government or a municipality, you can take part in that cooperative purchasing agreement. They just do a lot of the work for you. They make sure everything is compliant, and typically they get pretty good rates for the vehicles. So again, if you are a government agency or municipality, you can participate in that. Unfortunately, if you're a for-profit or nonprofit agencies, you are not able to do so. But we can, again, we can help you with that. Other considerations, as far as that goes, all vehicles and manufacturers have already been verified by ODOT. And there's more information, again, at the link. We can put that in the Q&A, just about how that works. And then when you're applying for your vehicle, if that is what you intend to apply for, you should consider that inflation may happen, because typically the vehicle would not be able to be purchased until calendar year 2022. So keep that in mind. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jim, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the most exciting part, the application. But again, I will put in some of those links in the Q&A as well.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I greatly appreciate it. Just going to go through a few housekeeping things again for those who may not have heard at the beginning of the presentation. This is a Zoom webinar, so a few of the things that are different about that from a typical Zoom meeting are that we are presenting the information, so you will only see and hear myself and Sarah during this presentation. Your chat box function is disabled, so that will not work. We will hold a question and answer session at the end of this webinar. And if you have questions, feel free to type those into the Q&A box, not the chat box. Please use the Q&A box. And also, this is being recorded, and it will be posted onto NOACA's Section 5310 webpage in the next couple of days. So you should have access to that as well. Okay, so without further ado, I will move into the next section of our presentation. Sarah spoke about the background of the Section 5310 program, how it is administered by NOACA, how it links up to our coordinated planning process, eligible projects, eligible applicants, that sort of thing. I'm actually going to talk more deeply about the application itself, and then also our timeline for everything. So if you've applied to NOACA's Section 5310 program over the past couple of years, there shouldn't be any surprises. This should be pretty similar to the application, as well as the additional materials you have to send in with the application that you've submitted in the past. So the application itself should look very similar. We do try to streamline it every year. We know there's a lot of requirements and a lot of information that we need up front. And that's just to ensure eligibility, mostly to ensure that everyone is meeting FTA's eligibility requirements before we can make our funding decisions for projects. So we know there's a lot of information, but we do try to streamline it every year. This year, applications are due Friday, August 6, 2021 by 12 p.m. So that is a Friday. It is noon that it will be due. And we have a competitive application, which can be found online via FormStack. I can't click on this right now, but once the presentation is available, you might be able to click on that. And that's for municipalities, nonprofits, and for-profit public transportation providers. We have a separate public transit agency request form. Both of those forms are on NOACA's website, noaca.org/5310, that's 5310. And please make sure, first and foremost, that you are filling out the correct form. We have different requirements for the public transit agencies than we do for our competitive application. And so if you're not a public transit agency, make sure you're filling out the competitive application. If you're not sure, feel free to reach out to me later on, today or tomorrow, and we can talk about it. So NOACA will not accept any other formats beyond the online submission of the application form. It is an online web form. So we will not receive hard copies in the mail. We will not receive, a CD or DVD or USB, or we will not receive it via email. There are a few exceptions to some attachments, though. If you're having issues submitting attachments, through the online form, or if you don't have it at the right time, we will receive those. I will receive those via email after the fact. So this is the first page of the competitive application. It looks very similar to the transit agency form as well. Some things to note: the first page of these forms really gives you background information about the Section 5310 program, as well as giving you just some information about filling out the form itself. Some of the requirements are highlighted in the front here, such as the public notice, which I'll get into later, which is very important for everyone. But this is what it should look like. As I said, make sure that you are filling out the correct form. This may be hard to see, but that's okay. You don't need to see it in much detail. I just wanted to provide a snapshot of what this looks like. We have a Dropbox link, and it is throughout the application forms itself. It's on various pages. It says to click, to find this attachment, click here. Please click on our Dropbox link. You'll see that throughout. This is the Dropbox page that it will take you to. And this Dropbox page has all of the attachments that you may need for your application that we provide directly. So it includes any Excel spreadsheet, documents that you may need to download and fill in information. It also includes a handful of appendices that have example language for you for things such as your public notice, if you have a resolution that you have to have passed, for this project. All of that can be found in this Dropbox web link. If for some reason you cannot figure this out or cannot get the information, just email me and I can email you the attachment or the document that you need directly. Okay, so one thing, I'm going to go back. So this is what the Dropbox looks like. Look at the top right section. It says sign in, save the Dropbox, or download. Not everyone has a Dropbox account. That's fine. So I want you to take a look at that, and I'm going to go to the next slide. And it also says, once you click on a document, this is what happens. So it'll say sign in, sign up, and it'll have that little down arrow. That down arrow is the download button. So you do not need a Dropbox account to download any of these forms. You simply have to click that little arrow there to download any of the documents that you click on, and it should download directly to your computer. So I just wanted to call this out. We get a lot of questions about people with the Dropbox and it not working. There are some entities who are not allowed to access Dropbox as a website, and we understand that. So if there are any forms that you need that you cannot access through Dropbox, just send me an email. But I just wanted to show you that this is how you download any documents. You click this little, it's the download icon on the top right side. You do not need a Dropbox account to access this information. Also to note, when you are in FormStack, you will see a little at the bottom, it'll say save and resume later. So as you go through and you are filling out your application, you may not be able to do it all at once. So you can click that save and resume later button at the bottom. That will save your information, and it should provide you with an option to email or to copy or to email you a web link that will take you back to your application with the materials saved within it. By materials, I mean the text that you had input. So that is an option through Dropbox. One thing I will say is so there are signatures at the end of the application. We try to consolidate those at the end. In previous years, they were kind of spread throughout, but they should all be on the same page now. But that being said, once you sign something or someone that you're working with who has the authority to sign something signs it, you can go ahead and hit save and resume later one time. And then the next time you access that link, you must submit the application. Otherwise, the signatures will be lost. That is a security feature in FormStack. So just make sure that you're signing everything at the end. And please take advantage of the save and resume later function. One other thing to note, we've reached out to FormStack about some glitches people have had in the past where they will come back to their application after they use the save and resume later feature, and the information is gone. I'm not sure how often that happens. It does happen, but FormStack, has told us that if you use this correctly, you should be able to access your information. So for those of you who are doing this and really worried about it, just save your text from the information, maybe in another document until you submit it, just in case for some reason it does not save. I think that's a glitch that may happen sometimes. It shouldn't happen, but it does happen sometimes. So just want to call those things out to you. Okay, so another one of our requirements is that you have to have a public notice. And so this is essentially, this is so that all applicants of the program meet FTA's public notice requirements for, using these funds. And essentially, you have a few options here depending on what type of agency you have. So if you are a public body, you have to meet specific requirements. If you are not a public body, so if you are a nonprofit or a for-profit entity, you may not have to meet the very specific standards that public bodies have to. So that being said, you do have to, if you are a public body, so cities, for the most part, transit agencies, you have to publish a public notice in local media with the widest circulation to let them know that you are applying for these funds. This is the public notice. There is information about this in Appendix B, which is a document located on the Dropbox link that is throughout the application itself. I also have a copy, and Sarah has a copy if you can't find it and you need it emailed. But you essentially need to announce, that you're intending to apply for something through the Section 5310 program. Public bodies then also need to conduct a public hearing. So kind of like a public meeting, but it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit less complicated than a public meeting. A public hearing essentially lets your clients, your users that use your transportation service, your competitors, anyone else within your service area know that you are applying for these funds. And so essentially you should explain a little bit about this Section 5310 program. You should explain that you are applying for the funds, and you should explain what the intended use of the project is. Most of these are vehicles. So a lot of times you can say, we're applying for, vehicles through the, using these FTA funds. We intend to service our population of seniors or individuals with disabilities. These are the types of trips that we intend to provide, the amount of trips per year to these locations or what have you. Just kind of give the public some information about what the project or the program is. You do need to make sure that you provide a public notice 2 weeks before your public hearing. So this can all be one thing. Your public notice could include information about your public hearing. Make sure you provide at least 2 weeks notice. And that's fair. Now, being that the public, it does also say here that it must be held in an accessible location. That's, based on the intention of the 5310 program, focusing on individuals with disabilities and seniors. One other thing to note here, it says that the public hearing it says due to COVID-19 pandemic, we are flexible with this. So depending on who you are and what your current public meeting standards are based on the pandemic, just follow those. We trust that you're doing what you can do. I know that there was a public meeting, I think, restriction at the state level that was then, was removed as of July 2nd of this year. So some entities may not know what you're supposed to do for this. We trust that you will do what you can do. If it has to be a virtual meeting, so be it. Just make sure that you're reaching out to, those constituents within your jurisdiction and your service area. So with the application, if you have to hold, actually everyone has to provide their public notice information to us when you apply. So we really would like to see proof of that. So, if it's a notice in the newspaper, we'd like to see, your purchase notice or an affidavit of publication, or even if you photocopy it or, screenshot it or whatever it is, we would just like to see proof of that. And if you have your public hearing, we also would like to see minutes, comments that come out of that public hearing. It's very complicated, so we do get a lot of questions about that. Okay, so that's public bodies. Now, if you are a for-profit or nonprofit, you have different options in terms of providing a public notice about your Section 5310 application. So you'll see here there are 2 bullets, and this is also spelled out in the application. In case you're worried about having this available, it is spelled out in the public notice section of the application. So first of all, one of your options is to publish a public notice in local media with the widest circulation no later than September 3rd of 2021. The application is due on August 6th. We are providing, per usual, more time for public notice. We want to give all of our applicants time to do this, so we kind of give you about a month beyond the application due date to get your public notice requirements in. So we would like you to do that by September 3rd. There's required information in your public notice that's in Appendix B. It essentially just says what I just said. Make sure that you let them know what you're applying for, and that they could provide comment actually to NOACA to copy me if they have concerns about that. And you have to give them 30 days to provide notice to us, and that's all in Appendix B. Or one other thing you can do if you're a for-profit or nonprofit entity, you could just send a letter to all of the other agencies that provide transportation service in your service area. Depending on where you are, you may know who those providers are or not. We do have a pretty good list on our coordinated plan, which there's a link to that on our Section 5310 webpage of service providers in the region, their service areas. If you're not sure, just feel free to let us know. But it says letter. You can actually send an email, just letting them know that you're applying for the funds, and that they could provide comment to us, to NOACA, by 30 days after whenever you send them that email or those letters. So there is information in Appendix B about this. The application also has more information than what's on this slide. So if you have questions about this, feel free to let myself know, and I can help you with that. Okay. So we say the widest, you have to provide your public notice to the widest media available. We get questions about this all the time. What does that mean? Really, it depends on who your audience is based on your transportation service area. And we can't easily define that for you, but we can interpret what that might be. One easy example that a lot of entities use is, the good old fashioned newspaper. If you have service in many counties, you might want to go with Cleveland.com or the Plain Dealer or something like that. You could go with radio. I have heard some of our applicants public notices on, radio stations such as, local NPR or those sorts of things. So it's actually kind of interesting to hear those. But you can do that. You can do a television ad, community newsletter. If you're a city or if you are a nonprofit who has service in a very small area, it might make more sense to go more localized. We understand that. We don't want you to spend more money than you need to on this. We just want to make sure that you're meeting the requirements and making a good faith effort to get the information out to the public. And also equivalent electronic means. So what does that mean? Some entities put it on their, if they're a city or something, they put it on their webpage. Just putting something on your webpage is not enough. But if you have newsletters that tie to that, if you have like a kind of if you have a good sense that your electronic engagement with your stakeholders is strong and they will get the information and have the ability to comment to you, then we trust that. So any questions you have about this, feel free to get in touch with me. But we try to be flexible with this, and we don't want you to, exhaust too many funds on this. So just kind of look at your service area and how you can best get the information out about your application. Okay, so as you can tell, we're just highlighting a few pages of the application. This is not everything, but these are kind of the areas where we usually get a lot of questions or people, it's very complicated. So we want to make sure that we're explaining this to everyone. This is the attachments page. It is the last page of your application. At this point in time, your signature page should include everything you have to sign for on the page before this. And so application attachments, your final page, it has everything that you need to attach. And they are different for the public transit agencies than they are for the competitive application. There's a lot more attachments for the competitive application because based on what type of entity you are, you may have to provide us different things. So, like a nonprofit or for-profit typically has to provide us with more attachments than a public agency, for example. So not everyone, though, has to upload every attachment. So just be clear, pay attention to your application and what you need. One of our last pages has kind of a summary of everything that's needed based on who you are. And so you can use that as a checklist. I always advise people to go to that page. It's like the signature page with the application certification and everything. But it does have kind of an exhaustive list of all of the sections you have to fill out and then all of the attachments you may have to submit based on what type of entity you are. So use that. But that being said, this page here has all the attachments. I'm going to briefly go through them. The first one, it said, if you can't read that's fine. This will be available to you and you can ask questions. But the first thing is the risk assessment, financial audit, 990 reviewed financials. We're a little bit more flexible this round on what you can submit for your previous financial for our risk assessment. If you have a financial audit that's independently audited, that is the best thing you can submit to us for your financials. But we will accept other items. So that is the first thing. Pretty much everyone that is applying needs to provide us with something that indicates their financials. And most of you do submit an audit. So that's helpful. But if you don't have an audit based on who you are, or if your reviewed financials or your 990 are more accurate or more up to date than an audit that may have happened a few years ago, submit those. If we don't get what we need from you, we will reach out to you after the application is submitted. That being said, so don't worry too much about things. If something might be missing, we'll reach out. Next, the agency financial management and cash control procedures. That is an attachment that is really, I believe, for nonprofits and for-profits only. So if you are a public body and you have a public audit, you don't need to submit that. One thing to note is, look to see if there's only certain types of documents that we accept for these. We really want a PDF for everything except for some of the Excel spreadsheets. So a PDF is the best way to go with all of these. It is usually the smallest document in terms of the megabytes that it takes up. And it's also something that's not, is easily editable as a Microsoft Word document that I could accidentally open up and change something. So PDF is more of a final version. We would like that for a couple of reasons. So please, PDFs are great, except for the spreadsheets that we require. We want to be able to, open up and see how the spreadsheets work and actually copy the data into master spreadsheets sometimes. So next is the agency financial information. That is another requirement for nonprofits and for-profits, potentially based on who you are. Transit agency letter, that is a requirement for everyone but transit agencies. Essentially, and I'll get into this later, you need to upload a letter from the transit agency or transit agencies in your service area, indicating that you are helping to fill in gaps in their service. Vehicle fleet stats, everyone has to fill this out. I actually had an example of it pulled up earlier. It really just is an exhaustive list of all of your vehicles in your fleet, their years, their mileage, what have you. That needs to be an Excel spreadsheet. Supporting letters from coordinating agencies. If you work with other agencies and you have letters of support from them, that's helpful. Put them there. We would like that to be one file. So compile them all into one PDF and upload it as one. Also, we just want 3 letters of support. That's our minimum or our maximum. We don't need more than that. So maybe reach out to those that you have the deepest relationships with for providing transportation. The next is the public outreach letters to peer agencies and service area. This is where all of your public outreach information goes, depending on what route you go with public outreach. We want you to combine them all into one PDF and upload it here. A non-discrimination form, that's really, in that section of the application, we allow you to give us more information on your non-discrimination policies, or, even if you have, some sort of issue right now or a legal issue with Title VI or something. So this is just for that, if you have anything additional. Next, the resolution of authorizing board. We have language in Appendix D, which provides you its sample language for an authorization, a resolution, what have you, supporting your project. So this is where you will upload that. And then last, combined signature pages. If for some reason you couldn't figure out how to sign it and you wanted to print off the signature pages, you could do that and then scan them and put them all together and upload them here. So some of this stuff we've talked about, some of this stuff we'll get to in a moment. Okay, so here, risk assessment. Essentially, applicants need to provide the following as available. Your most recent independent financial audit. This is a requirement for public entities and nonprofits. All of those entities should be audited. We would like it to be as recent as possible. We will not accept anything that's 3 years old or older for the audit. Next, if you have a DUNS number from the US government's SAM system, please provide that. We do review your entity against that system to make sure that you are make sure you're in good standing, essentially. That's one of our risk assessments. And then also your Ohio charter number. So if you are registered with the Ohio Secretary of State, which I believe nonprofits and for-profits should be, you should have an Ohio charter number. Not every entity will have both a DUNS number or an Ohio charter number, but you all should have at least one of those. So please provide us with what you have that's in the application itself. Also for nonprofits and for-profits, we want you to list 2 fiscal agents, two people with your organization who are involved and oversee the fiscal controls, with your entity. If you're a smaller entity, you may only have 2 people. We understand that. If you have questions about that, let me know. We also have information to your financial plan. So this is within the application itself. We just want you to let us know what your plan is overall for your financials moving forward for your program. This is a narrative. In the past, we did have a 5-year financial plan. So now we've made it for the next 2 years. So that should be easier for you. Item C, references. We want you to provide 2 references of current or recent funding agencies that you've worked with. That's important. We may check your references. This is more so for newer applicants. Everyone, that's a for-profit or nonprofit should provide this, but if we haven't worked with you in the past, we may be checking references. Also for nonprofits and for-profits, your written financial management and cash control procedures. So this is something that essentially lets us know that you have good accounting practices in your organization. If you don't have cash control procedures, or if you don't understand what you need to do, there is actually a web link in the application of generally accepted accounting principles that will outline that to you. If you don't have these procedures, but you do have an accountant, you can work with them potentially to develop them. If you're a small entity that doesn't have these, it should be pretty simple to come up with them. Next, the applicant's financial information. So really what this is we want you to, this is one of our spreadsheets in the Dropbox that we want you to fill out with your financial numbers. We are requiring this for nonprofits and for-profits. This is separate from your financials that you submit that's either audited or 990. This is really just you putting in information for us. Other attachments, your coordination letters from partner agencies. We say up to 3. We've had many times where we used to actually accept up to 7 and then up to 5 and now up to 3. We understand that a lot of you do great work with other agencies, but really just kind of highlight those that you work with the most, or you have like the most complicated relationship or something like that, where you can provide information to us. We just want to know that you're coordinating if you can. We don't need, the amount of letters doesn't really matter. We just want, to see that you have a good coordination relationship with some other entities out there. And also, like I mentioned, communities, nonprofits, and for-profits must submit a letter from the public transit agency, which serves as your service area, indicating insufficient service for your client's needs. I will say that insufficient service, that is an FTA, that's FTA language, or I think actually maybe US code language regarding public transit agencies. And essentially all it means is that public transit agencies can't meet all of the transportation needs for all people at all times. So you will need to reach out to a public transit agency, which is in your service area, or that if you go across county lines, you may actually have to reach out to 2 public transit agencies or 3. So, if you have service in Geauga County, We have Joanna Santilli. With GCRTA, Joel Freelick is currently the contact as far as I know. Lake-Tran, Andrea Abbey. And this, information, if you aren't sure, if you don't have this information, this will be on our website. As I noted, the presentation is being recorded, so you can come back to it, or you can just reach out to myself or Sarah White for this contact information. The other ones, Lorain County Transit, Pam Novak, and Medina County Public Transit, the executive director there is Shannon Ryan. So that's who you need to reach out to get a letter to be eligible to apply for the funds if you're not a transit agency. Okay. So more information about attachments. I mentioned the vehicle fleet statistics sheet before. We actually have 2 of these in our Dropbox folder. If you've applied before, you filled this form out before. In fact, if you've done that and you have one from last year or the round before, you can take that information in that Excel spreadsheet and copy and paste it into here. And it should still into the new one. Please download the new one because it calculates the years. This calculates everything. I think you might be able to see my mouse here, but down towards the bottom, this calculates everything as of this year, 2021. So it really just lets us know like what the average age is of your vehicles and that sort of thing. So if you did submit this in the past and you don't have it, you can email me and I can send you the old one. So you can just copy and paste your vehicle information into this spreadsheet. I will say the documents, you can only input information in the yellow here. Everything else should be a formula that calculates information for us to know. So you really put in your VIN, your vehicle type. That's actually something you click on and there's van, LTV, LTN, different options that pop up. Your make, the model, the make, if it's ADA compliant or not, that's a yes, no, that should pop up. The calendar year you put in service, the miles as of this month, if you don't get the miles until early August, that's fine too. The total amount of trips for that vehicle per year, you can estimate that if you don't have it per vehicle. We just want to know. And then are you replacing it with Section 5310 funds this round? So we want to know if that's a yes, no. We want to know we want to know which vehicle or vehicles you may want to be replaced with these funds. So that calculates all of your vehicle information down here at the bottom. There are 2 versions of this. There's one if you have 10 or less vehicles. There's another one if you have, I think, up to 60 vehicles. So just make sure you either use the large or the small spreadsheet. Most of you will use the small one because most of you have 10 vehicles or less. And if you will download this from the Dropbox and you will update it and submit it at the end of your application. Okay, this is only for nonprofits and for-profits. This is our agency financial information. If you filled one out in the past, you'll notice that this is much smaller. There's much less information we're requesting than before. We really just want someone who, we really just want to know, have an idea of your financials, like what are your assets, what are your liabilities, revenues, operating income, expenses, that sort of thing. So we want it for 2019 and 2020. So those are audited or reviewed. We want it for 2021, which is this year. So whatever you have that's up to date or easy for you to put in is fine, whether it's your 2021 budget, or even if you have actuals like right now, or like, as of June or something, feel free to put that in under the 2021 column. And then 2022 is giving us an idea of what you plan your financials to be next year. So we use this as part of our risk assessment. This is only for for-profits and nonprofits. Just whoever oversees your financials should understand these terms and should be able to input them pretty quickly. And you may have done this last year or the year before too, so it shouldn't be new to those previous applicants. We are asking for less years though, which should be less time that you have to spend on this item. Okay, so other attachments, letters of support from coordinating agencies, please combine them all into one PDF and submit that at the end of your application. We only want one letter from each coordinating agent entity. Okay, so we say this every year, and I want to stress this. If you are a city, we do not want a letter from your fire department and your mayor and your senior center. Like that's the same entity, it's the city. So, please please provide us, in that case, from one of those departments or from the mayor or something. We really want to see kind of the varying relationships you have with your transportation service in your service area. So just be thoughtful with who you choose. If you have a lot of partners, choose those that make the most sense, that can kind of provide a good picture to us of your relationships. If you don't have a lot of partners, that's okay too. Just, provide us with who you have, and how we really just want to see in the letters and in the application itself, we want to understand that relationship, and how you coordinate with each other, because part of the tie of this program is ensuring that there's coordination amongst the awardees. So we want to make sure that we're fostering that, as well as our coordinating planning efforts in the region. Next item is the resolution of an authorizing board or city council in support of the project and funding the local match. This is also, it's included in the application as an attachment. If you don't have it before the deadline, that's fine. You can email it to me after the fact. We would like it by September 3rd. If you can't get it until a week after, that's fine. Just let me know. We do require this to move forward with your application review, but we also realize that this is a very tight application timeline. So we try to be flexible with some of our requirements that may take more time, such as, a resolution or your public notice information. Okay, so now we kind of are going away from the application. I did not go over all the pages of the application. As you know, if you've seen it, it's pretty long. It's I think about 14 pages. A lot of that is to explain the program and why we are asking for things. But we wanted to highlight the items that we get a lot of questions on that are more complicated to you. So now we're going to talk about how NOACA staff evaluate the applications based on the criteria, and then after that, the timeline. So we determine our transit agency needs based on demonstration of need and the specialized populations that are served in that area. So for transit agencies, we don't actually, have 100 points. We actually evaluate their program. We ask for the amount of trips they provide, that sort of thing, but we don't do the point structure. We kind of see which transit agencies apply for funds and look at their program and see what their needs are. And then we often do ask transit agencies for more information once we kind of have baseline information to determine what our recommendations will be. As for the competitive applications, there are 100 points in the application. Each section of the application that has points explains what the point total is for that section. Not all sections have points. A lot of the sections are requirements, but there are sections that have points. So we really look at your demonstration of need, which is up to 70 points. So I believe that's section 2 of your application. It really talks about what your transportation program is and what you're asking for, and how, whatever you're requesting, how that will help meet the needs of people in your service area, the transportation needs of people in your service area. As Sarah mentioned, we typically, we prioritize vehicle replacements. That's the majority of the awards we have made over the past, actually since we've started running this program back in 2015. So that's important to make sure that we have, everyone has fleets that have vehicles that are in a state of good repair, that are safe, and that are functioning well with lower maintenance costs. So, vehicle replacements, if you need those, you need to explain, why to maintain service. Or if you want new vehicles, you're expanding service. So you need to explain that in your demonstration of need. Usually that's reflected in, if it's an expansion, it's reflected in the fact that you provide a lot of trips and you don't have enough vehicles to provide the trips that you need to provide for your clientele. And so also there are other things like communications equipment, computer hardware and software, mobility management, those sorts of things. You just really in this section, you need to demonstrate why you need these things. So please be concise but provide us with enough detail so we can kind of make a good judgment call on your needs. There are often times when entities apply for a couple of different things, like a vehicle, maybe a replacement vehicle, an expansion vehicle, and then computer hardware and software. And, we evaluate all of those separately as separate applications in a way. They're one application, but we see them as different needs. And so, we often will provide partial awards to entities that provide us with requests for more than one type of thing. So that's just pretty common. And then next, we look at your agency's effectiveness. So this section kind of, what we look at is kind of your management ability of the program and our confidence with that based on your application information, as well as previous experience with your entity. If we've worked with you in the past and you provide everything we need and we have confidence, that's good. If we haven't worked with you in the past, though, that shouldn't be a negative thing. We just want you to demonstrate to us that you can manage this federal grant and meet all the qualifications that we need. That's kind of one of the reasons why we ask for so much information up front, so we have a better idea on how to have confidence on your entity's ability to manage this federal grant, and also to provide the transportation service. Lastly, here is coordination up to 20 points. I mentioned coordination letters. Sarah mentioned the coordinated plan. Coordination is an extremely important tenet of this program nationwide, but also at the regional level here, NOACA, we really do try to foster coordination. We have our mobility our mobility coalition, that Sarah manages with other partners in the region, and so it's very important for us to see that, because we also see efficiencies in the region if entities are coordinating. So that's up to 20 points in our application. Okay, so this is our timeline of this solicitation. For those of you who have applied for funds, or mostly, I guess, that have been awarded funds in the past, it's not a very quick process. We have an annual timeline, and there are a lot of steps. I don't expect you to remember all the steps here that are on this calendar. But a few things to note. We opened our solicitation last month, a month and a day ago. Today is our webinar to provide information to applicants. Our applications are due at noon on August 6th. One thing I wanted to note about this is we have it due at noon because sometimes there's always a couple of applicants at the end that are having technical issues or something. So that just gives us a couple of more hours after that to deal with those issues. If you're having issues by any means, feel free to get in touch with me, email me or call me and let me know. And so I can work with you on that. But, just so you know, they're due at noon on August 6th. Then what we do, we go through NOACA's process. So we kind of go concurrently with two different things at the NOACA level. We have NOACA's advisory councils, subcommittees, committees, and then our board of directors. And so they're on a quarterly schedule. So we have to make sure that we present our applications and then our recommendations at the right time to the right group. And that takes 3 months. But we also at the staff level have a team that evaluate all the applications. When we have questions, we reach out to some applicants if we want more information or if there's incomplete information. So that takes a lot of time too. We want to make sure that we're making good recommendations, and so we kind of are doing those concurrently between, the application deadline and then when the projects go to our board of directors in December. So this is mostly our committee schedule. So that's kind of letting you know our official process to provide presentations of the applications and our recommendations as we move forward. Now, a few things to note here. September 3rd, that is that other deadline for other items beyond the application and most of the attachments. That's where we're asking you to send me your public notice if you haven't yet, and your authorizing resolution if you haven't yet. And I will reach out to you if I don't receive these materials. Then another big thing to note is on October 8th, that's when NOACA staff intends to present our funding recommendations to our planning and programming committee. So that's when you can kind of see the list of what the staff thinks should be awarded funding. Now the committee has the decision to change those recommendations. So they can look at the recommendations and they are the authority on this. So we simply at the staff level recommend, and then they can either move it forward or they can decide to do things differently. So then after that, December 10th is when the NOACA Board of Directors makes their final funding recommendation. So that's when you'll know, the final recommendations from this round. After that, you'll work a lot. If you're awarded funds, you'll be working with myself and Sarah White on, essentially the next step, which starts our contracts negotiation and procurement process. And so that really, we start in the background working with our partners at ODOT and with FTA to make sure that everything is done, but it takes a while. There are a lot of steps that have to happen. So typically then, those who are awarded in December can start procuring their items the next spring or summer, depending on the scheduling of things. So, and those of you who were awarded last round, you're very close to that. I know I've been in contact with a lot of you about contracts. So we're almost there for those who are awarded last round. Okay, I pretty much just went over a lot of this in the previous slide. Essentially, there's a lot of requirements that we have contracts. We have to submit things to FTA and ODOT and whatever. So that's kind of what we do after you're awarded funds through the program. Okay, so here we have a few resources. FTA has a technical assistance webpage that you can look at. That's very high level. Our program is more detailed. Because FTA doesn't manage it for every entity. They are the oversight agency and we manage it for this region. So if you have any questions, get in touch with us, myself or Sarah White. But this website does include information such as the National Aging and Disability Transportation Center, the National Center for Mobility Management, Intelligent Transportation Systems, peer-to-peer program, and the National Transit Institute. So if you need resources or just want more information about a lot of these things, the FTA has a lot of information available there. Also is the Coordinating Council on Access and Mobility Federal Funding Braiding Guide. So this is, just more information on how you could potentially, I think they use the term braiding to kind of talk about how you can kind of commingle funds for projects. Because as you know, with federal funds, depending on the federal funding stream, there are different requirements and different options that you might have to do that. So this is kind of a guide for that. Okay, so without further ado, it is question time. We appreciate if you held your questions until the end. We did receive a few questions through the chat that Sarah was able to handle while I was talking away. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and look at that. If you can't see it, go ahead to your Q&A, not your chat. Your Q&A is where you ask questions. So I'm just going to kind of go over what was already asked so everyone knows. Leslie Seeger asked, is there a deadline for public notice? And she probably asked this before I got to it. Yeah, September 3rd is our deadline. If you're having problems with that for whatever reason, just get in touch with me. If you're having any questions or problems with deadlines, let me know, and we'll see if we can work with you on that or not. Just a lot of it's based on our evaluation process as we move forward. Another question, which Sarah answered by anonymous. In the past few years, we've experienced a concern regarding the Public Transportation Agency and receiving the letter. Will NOACA be sure to let RTA know when we'll be contacting them? Who is the person we need to contact? So yeah, Sarah, thank you for putting the information there. Joel Freelick, he's been the contact for the past couple of years. I know GCRTA tends to, I believe, I don't want to speak on behalf of Joel or anyone there, but my understanding from the past is that they tend to do these in batches. So they know that this is coming. We've been in contact with Mary Flannery at RTA, and she's usually good at getting in touch with Joel. So, but they kind of have a standard form letter. So, if you don't hear anything back for a while, let me know and I can make sure. But they don't necessarily reach out to you right away. They may do a couple of letters at a time. That's how we do things too. So, okay. So other questions that we have here, and Sarah, feel free if you'd like to talk too about answering some of these. Linda Malicki asks if there's vehicle information for both owned and leased vehicles. I think that you're asking if we're requesting that information in our vehicle fleet statistics sheet. And I would say for all of the vehicles that you provide transportation for specialized populations, we would like your whole fleet. We don't want just the vehicles that might be through this program or the vehicles that you own. We want information on all the vehicles that you operate. But that's a good question. You don't want to leave out those leased vehicles. Even though you technically don't own them, you are using them. And so that helps us to gauge, what type of service you're providing to your clientele. And let me see here. And as I said, if you have questions, please use the Q&A function, and myself or Sarah will answer for you. And then Leslie has asked, are there age mileage requirements for eligibility to replace vehicles? That is a very good question. Yes, there are age and mileage requirements to replace vehicles, Leslie. So your vehicle, if it's going to be replaced, it has to have met its useful life, minimum useful life. And typically, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong here, for most of the vehicles, the minimum useful life is 5 years or 120,000 miles, I believe. It's either 100 or 120, depending on the vehicle type. So you need to meet at least one of those requirements, at least one, to have your vehicle replaced. Now, if you have a vehicle at this point in time that was purchased, this is 2021, next year will be 2022 when we will actually provide the award. So if you have a vehicle that was purchased in 2017, put in a service in 2017, right now it's 4 years old, but if it has like 150,000 miles on it, you use it a lot, it will be eligible for replacement next spring, next year, technically, when we do this. So, that vehicle is already eligible because it's met the mileage, but it will be eligible by years next year. So think about the timing of that. If you're unsure about a vehicle's eligibility for replacement, though, let Sarah or I know, because the useful life, the minimum useful life for each vehicle is different. FTA does have that information on their website, but we could probably help you out a lot faster. Okay. So do we have any other questions? We can wait a moment. Sarah, is there anything that, I may have missed or anything else you'd like to reiterate? Don't want to put you on the spot, but.
No, I don't have anything to add right now. But again, just if you have questions or need help understanding something, Jim and I are here to help you.
Right. Okay. So once again, my contact information, since I handle the application process, so I'm your go-to with application questions. We just want to make sure that we're consistent with our responses. So please get in touch with me with any application questions. My email address is plastered all over the application, so you don't need to write it down if you can get to it. My phone number, we are back in the office now. So over the past year during the pandemic, I usually have to call people back from my cell phone. But we're back in the office, 216-241-2414 extension 275, or my email, jthompson@mpo.noaca.org. Once again, the deadline is August 6th. Deadline for other items is September 3rd. And if this will be on our website in the next day or so, next business day or so, so it might be early next week. That is noaca.org/5310. Thank you all very much, and talk to you soon.